People often ask me how long does it take to charge my car on a long trip. So this video is going to be about that. 1,200 miles roughly from Chicago to Orlando and in 95-degree heat. So definitely not ideal driving conditions. Almost all interstate, and I'm going to go over the locations that I stopped at, how fast the charge was, and how much it cost to charge, so that you have a realistic idea of how well it can go in an electric car. But before I do the road trip stuff, I just wanted to take a moment to remind people that most of your driving is local. Most of your driving is in town. And if you have access to a level 2 charger, or a home charger in this case, the charging time is next to nothing. So I just wanted to take a moment to show you here. So we're going to circle around here and go into the garage. Just very briefly, I have to unlock the car, grab the charging cable, push on this little button, and plug in the car. And that's all it takes, just a few seconds. I know I have, and I'm sure you have in the past, while driving a gasoline-powered vehicle, you get up in the morning to go to work and find out you don't have enough gasoline, so you have to go to the gas station. And sure, it's a quick stop, 5 or 10 minutes, but as you saw, it just takes me a few seconds. So you've got to add up all the time that you're charging, driving, or putting gas in your car locally, and not just focus on that really long trip. So I'm just going to show you some screenshots and assume that you don't want to see video of me driving for hours. So this is the first stop south of Indianapolis from Chicago, for Chicago suburbs, in a town called Whiteland. This is a Pilot Flying J station. Most of them are on this trip. I chose them specifically because they're right off the interstate. You just pull off, you plug in, you go. There's no crowds because it's not free, so I did have to pay for these, but I wanted to give a very quick and representative example of what it can cost to do a trip like this. So 3 hours and 20 minutes of driving, 191.2 miles. This is our first stop. It turned out to be a pretty quick stop. Matter of fact, I think we were there only 8 minutes and went to 65% state of charge. This is a place where often new drivers can make the mistake of trying to go above 80%, above 85, 90, 95%, because the car charges slower and slower and slower. You only need enough range to get to your next stop. And I had this all planned out. So one thing that people will often ask me, is it as easy to drive a gasoline car? Is it as easy to drive an electric car as a gasoline car? No, it's not rocket science, but you do have to do a little planning. And I had this all planned out. So I knew I only needed to be here for 8 minutes. So we ran inside, we got a snack, we used the bathroom, whatever. 8 minutes later, you come out and you unplug the car. And we were able to drive to our next location, which was only an hour and a half away, 90 miles. And this is because the system, the highway system, still doesn't have chargers everywhere I want to go, but it's not so bad. We just went an hour and a half and had a second stop. And this time was an Electrify America. And we are on the north side of Louisville, and stopped here for a few minutes. Let's see, how long was the stop? 13 minutes. We got all the way up to 80%, because I knew I had a little bit more to go for the next stop. So again, 13 minutes. I forgot to say the first one was $15. This one was free because I have 2 years of free charging with Electrify America. But so we had 8 minutes and 13 minutes of charging. Now we drove another 2 hours, and in this case, we stopped at the very southern border of Kentucky going into Tennessee. And this one here is another Pilot Flying J. You can see the sticker on the charger, Pilot Flying J location. And the total cost on this one was $24. So we had 15, 24. We're about 40 bucks at this point in time. And again, this is a 14-minute charge. So really quick charges. This car is not an average charging car. A matter of fact, it can add, theoretically, 868 miles of range in an hour of charging. That handy data comes from Edmunds, edmunds.com. You can look it up. Edmunds EV charging test. how fast can you add range. And so for long trips, the most important thing is how few minutes or how many miles can you add in few minutes. And the Ioniq 6 is number one in that category. And that's with the rear-wheel drive, single motor. And I have the larger wheels. I may do this experiment again in the future with the smaller wheels because you get about 15, 18, 20% more range. Anyway, so we continued our drive and drove another 124 miles, another solid 2 hours of driving. And this stop was, as I'm scrolling through my map here, in another Pilot Flying J travel center. What is the city? Monteagle. And this is southern Tennessee. And again, this ended up being a stop that we didn't even need to make because our hotel had a charger. But to be fair, we were here for 8 minutes. The cost was unavailable, but because we added 27 kilowatt hours, saying 50 cents a piece, give or take, it was probably 13, 14, 15 more dollars. We then went to our hotel and were able to charge overnight there. So that was pretty quick and easy. And started the next day with 99% because I was able to unplug it a little bit before we left, and it was 99%. The next trip was a nice long one, 215 miles, 3.5 hours, all the way through northern Georgia, through Atlanta, past Atlanta, all the way to the other side of Atlanta. Here we charged at Buc-ee's, and again, $22. Like I said, the important thing here is that we did drive 3.5 hours. You can do that with full battery. And I think every time we've stopped, our state of charge on the battery is something between 20 and 35%. If you go down to 15 or 10%, of course, you can charge faster for longer. And our last trip, I didn't get the mileage on the car, but it was another good 2 to 2.5 hours south. And we stopped in the city of Valdosta. And this is the only real buzzkill for our speed, our time of charging. We had two complications. One, the chargers at the Walmart where I could charge 350 were full. And so I went over to the Circle K. It had a 180 kilowatt charger, which is still plenty fast for charging. But I did not know until another car pulled in that it was 180 kilowatt from the tower split between two cars if there's two cars plugged in. So we went from charging at 180 kilowatt down to 90, and then around 83%, I got a thermal throttle. The only reason I was going this high is because on this day, this roughly 600 miles was only 2 charging stops. The previous day was 4. So I tried quick short stops and fewer long stops on the second day. And we could have probably charged in 15, 18 minutes if I had the ideal charger. I knew this one was going to be a little slower. I figured 20, 21 minutes. When the other person plugged in, the charging speed dropped. And you can see here, I'm all the way down to 9 kilowatt because I got a thermal throttle. So that's one other potential problem with charging the battery really full when it's 95 degrees and you've been driving all day already. But this was enough range to drive from here all the way down to our house in the Orlando suburbs. So just 2 stops on the second day. Total charging time of the total trip was 86 minutes at chargers. I probably could have cut out 4 or 5 minutes in this location if I had the faster charger, and there was an entire 7 or 8 minute stop before our hotel stay that I could have cut out. So if I had done those things, it would have been close to 70 minutes. And I think with smaller wheels and more perfect temperature, something, around 80 or 75, maybe you could get this to under an hour, maybe as little as 50 minutes of total time off the side of the road charging at high-speed chargers for a trip that was almost 1,200 miles.